Okay, so when I was thinking about this, I've never actually recorded an introduction for this podcast. So, welcome to the Royalist King CJ podcast, where we talk about music of all kinds: pop, country, hip hop, trap, R&B, soul. Just overall, we're gonna take a deep dive into music, and just kind of see where we end up, and what conversations and what we can learn from the music that isn't so clear in the first listen. So, welcome to the Royalist King CJ Music Podcast, and I hope you enjoy. Okay, so we're gonna talk about this Gunna versus Little Baby and this Thug idea, right? Does Gunna have one of the best albums from Little Baby, Durk, or Thug this year? I don't necessarily know. I think we wonder who has the best album. We wonder who has the best album sales wise, right? And to some extent, I don't know. This is weird. Because if you ask, some people will say Gunna is a snitch, a rat, but who has the best consecutive album of the year? Who has the best sounding album of the year? And I know this is going to be my own personal opinion, right? But this is going to be a musical breakdown. I think if we run the numbers, how do we score this? And we're going to assume that the top four albums in any order. The top four would be either Taylor Swift for either 1 and 4, SZA being 5. I'm trying to think who would be. Would Metro Boom, Wallace would be number 6. Durk would probably be number 8, and Taylor Swift, right? I would assume those would be the top. Would be the top? I don't know. I would assume they would be the top. I assume they would be the top. I think. Right? So this is my question. Who has the best album out of Gunna, Young Thug? I think somebody said Durk and Gunna. And I don't know how to justify it. Right? Because we're comparing these albums. We have to compare a lot of different things. But let's see if responsible get right into it. Okay, so the question is, who has the best album? We're going to look projectly at the numbers. I think that's what we're going to do. There are a few things we have to look at before we go, who has the better album? We have to look at 3 albums. We have to look at Lil Durk's album, which had a lot of features. We have to look at Thug's album that had a lot of features. Right? We have to look at Little Baby, but I don't remember Little Baby dropping an album. I might have done one, and I might have a review in my back pocket for Little Baby. But Lil Durk's album, with the lead single being J. Cole, All My Life, which I think there's nothing wrong with that album. But I'll say this. I think Almost Healed is a good album. I think it's an okay album. I just think when you get into these features, for example, Therapy Session was okay, but it was like Alicia Keys and that song. It was a lot of features in that song. It was a lot of... Durk had a little individual songs, but he did have a lot of features. Right? And it was Keisha Cole, 21 Savage, J. Cole, which J. Cole, I think, you get J. Cole on any song, that is going to boost the amount of people that listen to it. Was it Morgan Wallace was on one of these? Or do I not remember the albums correctly? J. Cole, Morgan Wallace, Alicia Keys. Like, you have heavy hitters for this song, right? You have heavy hitters for this album. And there was a push behind it, because I've heard all my life, on every radio station I've listened to, I've heard all my life by J. Cole being pushed, right? It's been heavily pushed in people's rotations, which I'm not saying is a bad thing, but that's an industry push. That is an industry push. And then we have to go and look at Thug's album, which also had a lot of features. And I'm not saying Business is not a bad album, right? It's just kind of my least favorite Thug album. And Thug had B Slime, 21 Savage, Drake is on one of these, Travis Scott, Lil Uzi, and it's a 15-song track. You gotta remember, Gunna's album is, I believe it's 15 tracks as well, right? It's 15 tracks as well, and they're all Gunna by himself. And I think this is the thing. If you like the 808, then you truly might believe that Young Thug's album is the best. And I don't know exactly when Gunna started recording some of these songs. They could have been recording while they were both locked up, and then he released it when he got out. We don't know the situation. But Thug's album was also recorded that same way. So for me to go that these two albums shouldn't be compared is, to me, doing a disservice to saying that, oh, well, just because you record them over a jail phone, they shouldn't be counted. But when we talk about one of the greatest albums of all time, we get one of Lil Wayne's albums when he was literally on the jail phone recording it, right? When Lil Wayne was locked up. And so I'm judging Thug on that premise, on that album. And I think it falls flat because it's heavy 808s. And Metro Boomin is great at making albums, right? He's great at making them. But the beat gets extremely repetitive, like 3 songs, and no matter who's on that song, it gets very repetitive. However, and it's very much, I think, to me, if you're going to listen to an album, and I'm gonna do full reviews on all of these albums, hint by hint, everyone by themselves, right? But I've listened to most of these songs, and Young Thug's album, to me, Business is Business, is not an album. I get it. These are street albums, so I have to take some of these and grade them with a curve. But I can't. Thugs, it has no, like, true, like, no real meaning behind it. Like, it's there to make music, to have people dancing and to dance to it and stuff like that. But it's there. It's something you play in the background. I'm not going to turn it off if it comes on or something, but it's not something that I'm going to run to, right? And so that's where Lil Durk and Gunna had the edge, right? The edge over this Young Thug album. But then we get into Durk's album, and then we get into Gunna's album. And besides these two features that are on Lil Durk's album, I don't remember most of his album. Right, between the Alicia Keys, the J. Cole, I don't remember much of his album being good. Like, it's a good album. It's one of the great albums I've heard this year. Right, it's definitely one of the great albums I've heard this year. However, the way that Gunna has labeled some of these, it's a gift and a curse. It literally sounds like him trying to prove that he can still rap. And on top of that, you gotta remember, Gunna was well, we can argue that Gunna wasn't blackballed, but YSL didn't promote his music. No one promoted Gunna's album coming out. Not a single soul that I remember reported reported that Gunna was dropping an album. So you gotta remember, he did that with no promotion, and you can say that Russ did it without any promotion, and he still makes $1 million a year. It's interesting, right? It's very interesting because it's so it's so true. Like, we get into these situations where you're like, well, Thug made a solid album, okay, but besides that Drake and 21 Savage feature on 2 different songs, I don't even know if I care for those features, right? But Gunna has no features, and it's kind of him just kind of expressing himself and how he wants to change. Same thing with Durk, and this is not me knocking that Durk's ability to make a great album, but to me, Gunna has the intro back at it, showing that he can make back at it music and come back at it. He talks about the bottom. He talks about that bread and butter is he did it for a reason, right? That bread and butter being that lead single was something that he was just like, hey, I did, and he didn't necessarily beat the allegations that he was a snitch. He didn't beat the allegation that he was a rat, right? But at the same time, he's keeping his peace and just saying, hey, if you're here for the music, that's fine. If you don't want me to be a YSL, and to drop 80 and have 80,000, I think the correct number is 8,000 week sales, right? The number was 78,000 because he wasn't being backed by anybody. So they thought it was going to be a roughly low number. They thought it was going to be roughly low. But apparently what it's saying is roughly to 150,000 or 80,000. That's still higher than what anybody predicted, because Gunna was making this album truly for the people that wanted to listen to it. It wasn't about the hype. It wasn't about following anything. And people were asking, what was Gunna gonna make? Could that be part of the reason why Gunna's song did so well? It's possible. It is possible that is part of the reason. Even if you go look on Apple Music, it is placed in the top 2 albums. And the second is Thug's Business is Business. Right? But Gunna has found like a beat that fits Gunna perfectly, that makes you want to actually enjoy the music and listen to it in full. Thug's, on the other hand, you're kind of listening for the 808 beat. This is this conversation of, will an 808 beat save how people see me in music versus it's so weird, but this is playing out well this is playing well. This is truly playing well. Because I think he might have out-rapped both of them. I think he might have... it's weird. I think it's more material in Gunner's. It's more material. And Thug is playing more to protect his image in that case that he's in, because he can't say much. And Little Durk is just trying to change his image. And so you hear that throughout this song. But it's weird, because I haven't seen any papers on Gunna, but for him to try to clear his name up and speak on how he feels about the situation, I see nothing wrong with that. I think he should, after people have said so much about him, right? And people are gonna say, well, you shouldn't listen to rats. What did he? All he did was confirm, from what I've seen, is he gave testimony and confirmed that YSL is this. That's not what they're looking for in a RICO. I doubt that's what they wanted in a RICO charge, right? Not entirely sure. But it's weird. Like, it's so weird. I've heard people say that even if somebody had told me to tell, I wouldn't have. It's weird when you're facing 30 years on a certain amount of charges. You take what you can do. And knowing only 5% of cases go to trial, 5 or 8% of cases go to trial, which is a low number. A lot of people take plea deals, so I'm not entirely sure why I get that. So I don't know why people are getting this Gunna hating. Gunna didn't get the promotion he needed But if he's selling 38,000 physical units for a 15-track song to be in the top 3 without any promotion from anybody, I think Gunna has probably the better album, sales-wise, right? And I don't know how he outshined Durk. I'm not entirely sure. But his rapping ability, I do like this Gunna more. His rapping style, his ability to flow change from a different song to a different beat to talk about other topics. This is a Gunna that I like, right? But that Bread and Butter being the lead single did kind of boost this up. I don't know. And people are gonna say, did it match up? I think it did. I think it matched up because you don't. I don't keep track of the Gunna music when I'm listening to it in this album compared to that Thug music. I'm like 5 songs in. Okay, I'm 5 songs in. I don't know. I think I might enjoy that. I don't know. I think I enjoy Gunna's music maybe a little bit more. I don't know. For this, it's weird, and it's not about if he snitched or not because I don't have the proof. I have not seen the proof. I've asked questions. No one showed me the proof. So it's weird to me. I don't know. It's weird to me, but I do think Gunna has a better album for me. I think Gunna's album is maybe an 8 out of 10. Thugs is possibly a 6 out of 10 for me, or a close 7, but it's not an 8. But I will re-listen to all these again before I give my final opinion on these albums. But 3 takes of each album, and I'm still very much, I still prefer Gunna's album. So this brings in the question: did Gunna outshine Thug? And I think he might have. So to me, I think he did. I'm curious to hear your opinions. So let me know. I hope you enjoyed this episode.